guys, what's happening?
Hey, Tucker, welcome.
Sorry about that.
Well, it happens. So we have
Yeah.
no.
Hey, Tucker, just so you know, you've been voted in again as the president for next year.
We just elected you secretary. We're switching roles.
No,
We're gonna make you secretary.
no worries. That's fine. That's fine. But I just got out of work. Sorry, guys. Got here as quick as I could.
Mhm.
Of course, I clicked on the 6:30 one anyways, which isn't till tomorrow, Wednesday night. So,
Yeah, let's take
right.
a 1 hour reminder tonight. Not that it was, I mean, but usually I get a reminder, but it's quite all right. Well, do you?
What's going on?
Well, it sounded like, you know, to me, I think the reason why we're having an extra budget committee hearing is because we got a lot of questions and comments, and perhaps more to mull through than maybe we could handle on what's usually a short meeting, you know, after the community hearing is closed, budget hearing is closed. So I think that's why we're here. Does everybody agree with that, or?
Well, I think we're here because it was 9:30 last week, and we still had potentially more to hear or do, and then we had to have our meeting after that to finalize things, and so it was going to be midnight. So that was my thought when I suggested we needed to recess to another night. It would have been midnight before we got out of there, and I think, you know.
Well, I mean, you know, this is a separate meeting because the community hearing is still open. This is something totally separate. And when the community hearing re-adjourns, when that closes, we'll meet again. And I guess make our final determination, and then turn the board of directors will have their own minutes. I think a meeting. I think that's the process, isn't that right? I don't expect there to be much more of an open hearing. We'll open it and then close it on Wednesday.
Yeah, you typically have your hearing
Yeah,
and
I
then
thought-
vote, and then that's it. Right.
I thought this meeting was so that we heard a lot, and that we could discuss amongst the committee. You know, we've heard a lot from the community, from everybody who I hope wanted. It seemed like it slowed down, and everybody who wanted to say stuff. Wasn't a lot of questions, but I think that this is an opportunity for us to talk amongst ourselves in a public forum about what was said. You know, there wasn't a lot of back and forth, which I think was great, because I thought it was our job to listen. And my feel is this is our job to discuss how we are going to proceed, if we're going to change, if we're not, as a group. I don't know if that's what everybody else felt, but that was my feeling, was that this was a great opportunity for us to reconvene, you know, it took me 2 or 3 days to really mull over all the stuff I heard, look a few things up, and I thought this is a great opportunity for us to have that final discussion. So I didn't know where anybody wanted to go tonight. I know that we heard a lot. What we want to talk about, the warrant articles. We want to talk about if there's any recommendations for any changes, which, you know, we might hear. I don't know. We're not going to hear more. I guess we're going to vote on it officially and make our official recommendations next time. Is that how everybody else feels?
Yeah, I think we need to talk about the warrant articles and the trust funds. I don't think we need to go all the way back to the beginning and discuss all over again all the things we talked about at the last meeting. But if we do the warrant articles and the trust funds, and hopefully we have time to come to some conclusions as to what we're going to bring forward to the Wednesday meeting as our second half of the recessed public hearing. If we've changed our mind about anything, or we haven't, or we've thought of something else. I mean, I would think it would only be fair for us to bring it forward today. So folks have the ability to mull it over between now and Wednesday. That's what I think we need to do tonight.
Mhm.
I'm with you 100% on that, Bonnie. I think so too. And I mean, again, I think we open to any recommendations amongst ourselves here.
Mhm.
Questions we have, what we got off each other, how our feelings are. Again, I felt that, there was a lot of information. It's interesting to go out there and look up the information as I look up per student, and I find it per student in different towns all over the place. I felt that there were some numbers thrown at us that were comparing a elementary school to our district. We weren't comparing district to district, for instance, and then to say that we shouldn't be compared to Manchester when you start throwing school to school at us. Also not being compared to Manchester. Manchester just shut down one of their schools in the last couple of years. If I'm correct.
Four
What's
schools.
that?
We're talking about
Four schools, exactly.
4 schools. Yeah.
And I didn't want to overstate. Thank you. I was making sure. Thanks, Jerry. You always got it for us. So, that's actually something to look at as they continued to spend and had to shut down. I don't know. Those are things that we have to explore as we look ahead. We can't just look at right now. We can't just look at next year. We have to look at beyond this year and where we're going spending wise and that. And so I found those things kind of interesting. So that's kind of what I thought this meeting was about, for us to chew the fat, or however you want to say it, my good old northern side of me, to discuss those type of things.
Sure.
I don't know. Anybody else got a feeling on that, or find anything more on that information?
Well,
Yeah, go ahead, Jerry.
I definitely wanted to, talk amongst ourselves about the questions and comments that came out, and to talk about what we think, the implications of that might be for our final recommendations. I definitely wanted to go through, particularly the trust fund warrant articles again. I do notice we have the principal, the vice principal here. I don't know if we have questions for them, or if they have comments that they think is important for us to hear. Having listened to I wouldn't just call it a presentation, but whatever it was we had last Wednesday. So, so can I, Tucker, can we ask if they have something they would like to volunteer, or are they here to answer questions if we have them? So
I guess, what questions do we have if we have them? What are we, what do you want? What do you have in mind, Jerry? Do you have some thoughts? Again, I've shared a little bit where I'm at. What do you got? What are you thinking?
Well, specifically in the high school, we spent an awful lot of time on that chart with kind of the layout of classes and the number of kids per class. So I had a question just about study halls, and so every teacher seems to have a study hall, also has a planning period, and of course lunch. And whether that's contractually required, whether you consider that kind of a teaching slot or a non-teaching slot. So, and I know you, some of this may be inherited and you may have different opinions in the future or whatever, but that's kind of what we were given to work with since you're here. So I guess I would ask Mark that question.
Is that a Mark, or can Judith, or is that a Judith question, or both? Or, I guess Mark is more than welcome to answer that real quick. More than welcome to have that.
Mark, if you want to.
There he goes, he got it.
Yeah, so contractually, teachers have to have a planning period and a lunch. Okay. As far as a study hall goes, study halls are for the convenience a lot of times of students. So when they're able to use that study hall time to get either like some remediation from other teachers, they're able to sit down with teachers and talk with them about, further deepening their understandings of what's going on. It's not a direct teaching piece, but it's kind of like an open office hour for teachers in the high school to meet with students at that time. We do use that time for students to kind of, it gives them a variety of pathways. So if, let's say they're doing like an ELO or something like that, an extended learning opportunity, where they leave the facilities for a while, they go do their ELO and they come back. And a lot of those times there's their transitionary points as well. Not every time, but just another example of when we use them. So kids come back in the building with about 25 minutes left in class or something like that, and they're able to go catch up with teachers that they may need some extra clarification from. So study halls, they've been there for a long time, and they play an important role for the students and their opportunities to get the work done. Students don't necessarily do the work as homework as much as we'd like to think they do. A lot of them want to make sure, because they're busy, either working or doing after school curricular stuff, that they want to use that time and take care of their classwork at school. So that's the reason behind a lot of the study halls.
Yeah, so if a student wants to see a teacher, it's not necessary that his open study hall period will be the same as that teacher's, though.
Yeah, not always. No, last year we had a couple of more opportunities for that to happen in last year's schedule. This year, we had to change things up because of the way COVID formed. And so we didn't get that overlap this year like we would have. But typically you'll have multiple people, and we try to do that in sets, meaning like if you're typically with the 10th grade students or the 9th grade students, then you guys have the same study halls at the same time. But that's kind of what happened the year before. But this year, because of the limits of the number of people in the classroom, excuse me, the limits of how we wanted to space people out and how we wanted to free people up for them to be able to alleviate some of the parking congestion and the number of people in the hallways, that was changed.
It wasn't that primarily done during what was a homeroom period last year, Mark? Does that homeroom period happen again?
No, what you're talking about is like an advisory period. Is that what you're saying? Because a homeroom period is typically.
I can't remember. I don't remember what it was called.
Yeah. So last year, what happened was they had their homeroom is typically where they go in and they get, they're there for about 5 minutes while we take attendance or something like that. And then they go into their next classroom, and then they'll meet that homeroom again with advisory. This year, to limit transitions, your first period class is now your homeroom, where we take care of notices, we take care of attendance and things like that.
Cool. Just curious. I remember what he was talking about. I remember that being that advisory, which was a time for all, which it was a good class because every teacher was available at the same time. So it was cool. Yeah. But hey, we got to make changes when we got to make them. So that's cool. Anything else, Jerry? Are you good or?
Yeah, I was just saying we have 7 kind of teaching segments plus a lunch. One obviously is for planning. That's contractually required and reasonable. And then there's one for study halls that it looks like every teacher has. So every teacher has 5 slots to teach classes. So basically.
Yeah, I went through every teacher by teacher across that chart, and almost there's like 2 exceptions. They all have 5 classes of teaching, of actual subject in the box. They seem to have 5 classes to teach, plus the study hall or allocated something else in that box, plus and the planning period, and of course their breaks and lunch and so forth. So they do seem to average 5. There seems to be a couple exceptions, but 5 seems to be the number of classes they teach.
Yep. So, yeah, I guess I don't want to necessarily comment more about that now, but the, you know, if we use our number of the cost of having, you know, one column there, a teacher is 90,000, that basically, even though they do other things other than that, it's $18,000 per block that was on that sheet that we spent so much time looking at. So for teaching things, if you included the study hall period, it'd be 50. So, you know, I think that's kind of part of our concern when we see 2 kids in a class, basically.
Yeah.
So,
You know, and I noted that too also, that it does seem to be about 18,000 per class. And yes, and some of the classes have two students in them, so that's like 9,000 to teach whatever that subject was. You know, I noted the same thing. And, you know, it's not an exact mathematical formula and so forth, but that, you know, that in essence is what it amounts to financially.
I guess that brings up, does anybody, are there any other questions, or are there things that we want to bring before this committee to discuss amongst us? Or what do you have something, Bonnie, or?
Jerry, did you have anything else? I mean, you're the secretary and you took tons of notes, and I did too. I took down notes. Did anything else really pop out at you that we really need to follow up on? That, you know,
Bonnie, I think that there was a lot of discussion
yes,
about our number of reduction to the general budget in the salaries area.
right.
I think that was a big discussion, obviously. You know, unfortunately, when we're looking at numbers, the only way to look at it is to use that 90,000, which is a teacher you know, placeholder. You know, I look at it as a number, and then I have confidence that we send the number back and that they figure it out. You know, to sit there and say, I know anything about who's what and where. But I think that would be a big number that we would have some discussions of whether we want to stay where we're at or not.
Yep.
I'd love to hear people's comments and ideas or on that, or if there's any change from anybody.
Those were our biggest changes. You know, those were monetarily, those were the big changes. There were some others, the fence and the salary, the raise recommendation and a few others. But basically, we arrived at the budget cut suggestion. It's salaries that.
Well, isn't 72% of this budget people? And I hate to say that.
Yes.
I hate to say that.
it's somewhere in that range, yeah.
Yeah,
I think it's even higher than that.
it sounds terrible to say that, but unfortunately, when you're looking at numbers and budgets, 72% of it is staff and faculty. And that's what stinks. That's the hard part of this job, and any job when you're looking at budgets that deal with people. So that number is always going to be, if there's a change, the biggest number.
Yes.
You know.
And you know, so I think somebody even asked that, boy, you know, the economy's not good. Is this, you know, isn't that an awful thing to, you know, talk about having less employees? You know, I would say that, I mean, there are people who retire, who switch jobs, who leave every year on their own. So there is some attrition, and that occurs even now. I mean, you have to get a little lucky that you don't end up with a big hole. You know, you get somebody who, you know, we need to meet a key requirement for kids to graduate. something like that, but it's not quite as simple as this is how many people we have that we need in the school. The when we started with this process, and we said, and I was there for every, or participated in every hearing, even though I wasn't even on the budget committee yet. But we were told this was a zero-based budget, and parts of it were kind of done that way, especially like each teacher doing a great job and saying what they wanted in their classroom. But the 72%, wasn't discussed at all. And, halfway through the process, we were just kind of starting to come to grips with the unusual accounting system the school has, but plus starting to get a better understanding of what was driving the amount of investment we need to make in having people teach our kids, both from the teacher side as well as administration side. And just give an example, a zero-based thing might say we need 14 teachers who can teach K through 6, of which no more than 6 can be K through 2, which is a separate. Correct me if I'm wrong. Either of our principals here, but the reason why we have 14 is because they wanted to have two separate classrooms per grade, and you want no more than 6 K through 2, because there would only be a maximum of 6 teachers, and those who teach 3rd grade, 4th grade, 5th grade can teach 1st grade, but not the other way around, is kind of what we were told. So that's kind of a zero-based budget item that then we can talk about whether that's a reasonable number given where we're going for schools and so on. And I think, we had one class with only 17 children. And, one of the things we were thinking is maybe there could be at least a 1 teacher adjustment at that level. And we'd still have very, very high teacher to student ratios all throughout elementary school. And the math in the elementary school, I think, is a lot easier than what we talked about in the high school. Somebody made a very astute comment, and it's not anything that we didn't discuss, but in high school, you have to get a certain number of electives, you have to get foreign language. And I seem to even remember saying it's more like a calculus problem to try to figure out how to do high school. And I believe we're told math, science, English, and social studies, teachers who do 7th grade on up, if they're certified to do social studies in one, we can do the whole high school. So we really have 3 sets of teachers, each of those specialties. And start looking at the cost of those boxes and how many kids we have in them. We don't need to have 25 kids in a class like they do maybe at Manchester, or maybe even 27. But 5 is kind of small and kind of inexpensive, given that some of the pressures both taxpayers feel in our district, and then I think the direction that school funding is going in the longer term. So I don't know, did that kind of get too complicated, Tucker, or is it kind of?
No, I actually, I'm glad you mentioned that. That's interesting because I heard the zero budget. I missed none of the meetings from the minute I was asked to be part of this board. I'm with you. I went to all the meetings. I actually went in person. And I kept hearing zero-based budget. Zero-based budget. I've worked with a few. I've worked with a couple in school. It says I look at the students first, the number, and then what I need. And I fill in what I need. I also know from a little bit of my past that, there's an optimum number that you really get great success. It is
Mhm.
15 students. I know the state recommends 25, or it says, you can get away with 25. I don't want to say recommends. 15 students is a really number that 1 on 15 you can get somewhere in a classroom, especially in the high school. So those are things that I would think it is zero based. Now, I also heard the other night that we were told that it wasn't zero based. And that's what confused me, was that I recall being told that and again, I wasn't part of the committee, but this committee passed the budget last year and they
Mhm.
started with that budget. So I'm a little confused on that. But again,
You know,
we have to look at the numbers. Go ahead.
The way I interpreted that, and I was trying very hard to listen to those comments. He said, well, this number of teachers with this number of students in this configuration was good enough last year. Why isn't it good enough this year? Because they presumably went through the same process last year that we will go through this year. And to me, that's not a zero-based budget. That's that's this zero-based budget. You start at zero every year, and obviously you got you need a building, you need a principal, superintendent, and so on. Things start filling in pretty quickly based on requirements. But so the point was not you didn't start from scratch and think of how many of certain types of teachers would be ideal for our students and for our taxpayers. But last year this number was good enough, and I actually think there might even be a slight change because we had a few people leave. I think we have 3 new teachers. So, that's a different process than the way we were thinking about it. And it did take us, quite a while to kind of go through this and start to congeal some of these things. And, I know going forward that Dr. McCann, was saying they're working on something that might have fewer teachers in the future, but they didn't have a configuration yet for us that we could consider. So, anyway, that's kind of going back to our meetings. Again, going back, that was one of the points is that we somehow had recommended a budget last year that included that number of teachers, and so therefore, I think the point is that it's out of line for us to recommend anything different. Is the way that comment came across to me, and we have different people with different sets of skills. We put a lot of time and energy into this, and in order to try to make the smartest recommendation possible. And we've had tremendous help from the administration to try to do that. If we didn't have some of this information, we wouldn't, we couldn't have analyzed it and gone through it the way we have. So, I mean, you all remember it was the 2020, 2021 master schedule. That was kind of where we started thinking about it at the high school level.
Well, I agree. Yep. No, and I don't disagree with you. I think that's a great way to look at that comment saying that good enough last year. This year, it is a different budget committee this year. And again, I'm not saying that there hasn't ever been due diligence. The job of the committee is to do the checks and balances. I think this group took it very serious to do their checks and balances. When they looked at all the different, they went, I mean, everybody here went out and did research. What's going on out there at other schools. I've called 5 other schools myself when we were talking about principal and assistant principal, just to make sure that, what's going on in the community. Not that what everybody else does, we have to do, but it's good to see what's going on. And I called 5 different schools in the North Country. So I agree. I think that, people have to understand that there was a lot of due diligence done here, and there was a lot of research done. So that's why, I'd love to hear anybody else that has stuff, that the research they've done on this area. It's interesting because, as always, statistics, when you look, you can always find what you're looking for. It feels like, again, so again, if there's any other from our committee, any other comments that we need to throw in, or any other suggestions?
Tucker, this is Rob.
Awesome.
There's more to consider than just the simple, budget numbers as well. We're talking about the operation of the school. We're talking about the effectiveness of the operation of the school. And we're also talking about, there were so many things that have come up that I find very, very interesting that nobody has really wanted to speak to. For example, the issue, the warrant article changing the, special education budget to a capital fund budget. And there's many people that are very upset with anybody going against that idea. While to me, everything involved in keeping it the way it is provides for checks and balances. It doesn't make it the easiest way to get the money, but if you have a legitimate reason for the money, there's no problem with it. Again, then we listen to people talk about, we should eliminate the budget committee altogether, which again eliminates checks and balances, all things that are in place to cover the concerns of the taxpayers, the parents, and everyone that's involved, because every one of them wants to make sure we have the best education system we can for the dollars. Yet we have people that want to go against that, and it directly correlates to the fact that our school board has all except for one person on that school board has a direct relative family member that works under the superintendent, yet is supposed to be directing the superintendent. So that provides for the possibility of concern for people. Yet everybody wants to shuffle these kind of things off to the side and make things more and more, convenient for everybody. There are people in town that those things go through and they're ready to split the school. It doesn't have to be Lincoln Woodstock Cooperative School District. There are people that are looking at the fact that Woodstock pays twice as much on each 1,000 as the Lincoln resident does. They're looking at the return on the value of that investment, and can I get a better return on value somewhere else? And that is a serious point of discussion for many, many people. So, if everybody wants to have, a teacher for every individual kid, I say you guys go for it. But there's people that don't agree with that. And there's people that don't agree with how the administration is looking at addressing these different things because they have real concerns. And it may have nothing to do with anybody in office today, but these changes that people are looking for have effects down the road too. And every time you try to do something to make this or that easier, including the massive amounts of money that are in all of these trust funds right now, it's time to use some of that money. You have enough in the vehicle trust fund. You don't need any more in the vehicle trust fund. You can go buy a new vehicle right now. You don't have a need to buy a new vehicle. Plus, you got a couple vehicles sitting around that you're not even using anymore. These things are just let's go get some more money from the taxpayer without a concern for how much those taxpayers are paying. Nobody has brought any proof that the school is doing anything to improve the education. I was told to go out and talk to people that graduated. I did. And then I went and talked to 2 people that transferred to other schools and found that they went from A's to C's. Quality of education is in question here. There are people that have said, we don't need to be measuring based on test results. You're a school. You give tests all day. Yeah, that's the way you need to be measured. So we have talked about all the different line items. I personally don't see any reason to change any of the line items that we've all spent a lot of time going over. And I think it's, late in the game to be asking for any further information. Everybody's had plenty of time to bring in all the information that they wanted to. So I don't think there's any more reason to go over and ask for any more of that. I think it's simply time to, let's go down and go through the warrant articles one by one, give our finals on those and wrap this up.
All right, Robin, I think that's some great points. And I think it's always, it's so hard. And again, I agree with you that, everybody wants a great education. There's no doubt about that. There's not a person on this panel that doesn't want a great education. There's not a person in this community that doesn't want a great education. And that's hard to define. Because if you go out and look at the measures that are out there, you would have to dispute whether or not it's a great education. And that doesn't have anything to do with the type of human beings that we're bringing together, type of human beings that the school is creating. They're doing a great job creating wonderful human beings. And my point would be that we can do that and provide them with a great education and all that other stuff. The great, let's say, dare I say, high test scores and stuff like that. So I agree with you that it's hard to measure all of it. And our measures right now don't look great. And that's a tough spot to be in right now. So it's interesting. I kind of say that you put something before us that we should go through the warrant articles and have a discussion on that. I don't know if anybody has any more discussions.
I have one other thing I wanted to bring, because I thought somebody made an interesting point, and it's definitely one we talked about, and that is, what if COVID does not resolve, by the fall, and we're, at least, no better off than we are right now. And as we talk about it, do we think that impacts our recommendations at all? Assuming that we have to keep, bigger spaces in classrooms than maybe the classrooms are designed for. So I'm confident we talked about it some, but it was brought up, and I think it's a fair point that that we're in an unusual time that way, and if we are putting people in fewer classrooms and they're the same size, then are we going to be outside of our 6-foot rule? In which case, we either have to have some quick reconstruction of classrooms, or we have to go slower on the change in teacher-student ratios and so on at that level. So if we do talk about that's one thing I thought it would be appropriate to talk about tonight. But other than that, I'm certainly willing to go through now in more detail the other warrant articles, other than the budget itself.
We're not going to go through all of them, are we? Are we going through just the areas that we made suggested changes in? We're not going to start at the beginning, are we, and go all the way back through?
We're not going to go, Bonnie, we're not going to go line item. No. I think, again, the articles are 7 that we're involved in.
Right.
And I think the only other part, of course, is what we're talking about right now, is a little bit of the salaries. Whether or not we want to keep it our recommendation. Again, it really comes down to whether or not we want to keep our recommendation to the total general fund, of reducing it to that amount.
Well, we have the boiler, we have the roofing, and we have the amount of money that if there's an excess this year, whether any of it, should go into particular trust funds or not.
Right.
So I think those are the ones I was thinking we were going to talk.
Yep, and I agree with. There was also another article about. It kind of relates to the contracts. I think the teacher contract one that we. We should talk about that. That one should be mentioned also, and at least so that we can show our feeling or where we're at on that. I think, and I'm kind of come back to what you said, Jerry. Yeah, I wish we could figure this pandemic out, or whatever we want to call it, and the spacing and all that. I think that's a great area. We discussed it quick.
Mhm.
I'd like to, anybody else's thoughts on that? It's hard to predict, obviously. I never saw it coming. I'm one that definitely, wow, the effects that this would take on everybody. So I think it's a fair question, Jerry. I think it's a very fair question. And I think you're right, that was brought up. So. The classrooms are the same this year that they were last year, but they're able to figure out that spacing, right? Is that the feel I got, that the classrooms are no different than they were the year before, except for spacing? Again, I would never want the school to go remote. To me, I think that just ruins our community. I don't want to say ruins, that's a bad, tough word. That hurts our community. That hurts the students.
Tucker,
Go
I'm
ahead,
sorry
Bob.
to jump in here, but as a
No, go
budget
for it.
committee, that's not what we're here for. The school decides how they're going to operate. We don't determine that. That's up to the superintendent and the principal to figure out that problem. It is not for us to do. So rather than
Fair.
speculate on what could possibly happen with the pandemic and just burn a lot of time here, let's go with the things that we've got to do that are factual, that we have to make it, our decisions on today. And then we can have all kinds of, conversations about.
You know what? That's fair. That's fair. I agree with you. Okay. All right.
Yeah. And we got a comment here that we just can discuss them tonight. We actually will vote on them on Wednesday.
Yes.
Right. Correct.
So.
Right. What was our big one that we wanted to, where did you want to start, Jerry? And I just throw it at you because you have them right in front of you. I know that.
Well, we can start with the boiler, I guess. I think that's the one at the top of the list. I haven't changed my mind about whether to recommend it or not. I will say I did talk to our state senator today, and I made a couple of calls down to the State House, and just because since we met, there was $30 million in the proposed budget by the governor for school infrastructure projects, and it would seem that this project would meet the definition of that. So, as a heating efficiency improvement type of project. So, in addition, we received some really great comments from the audience. I think it was Tom Sabarin who talked about, if we're going to do this, we should put in all the filtration systems that we can to protect the teachers and the students included in the project, and that may make it available for a large amount of the federal funds to improve the safety, for virus safety in particular of our school. So, I think the project it still isn't quite fully scoped in a way that I was very comfortable with the presentation. I think there's some opportunities to get a better project done. It's not needed necessarily immediately. We do need to address it. It needs to stay on the front burner, but and I think Bonnie had one other suggestion on that too, about maybe the way the project could be more efficient for our school system.
Yeah, I agree that the timing isn't right now. I'm not ready to wholeheartedly endorse the project for a number of reasons. Tom Saban brought up the filtering issue, and we haven't heard any figures for that. And I'm not sure that we've totally explored a central heating system to heat the whole complex. That this is the way to go. So I don't think we're ready. I don't think we have all of our questions answered, so I second the motion that we're not ready to
Except
recommend.
when we're not doing motions. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we're discussion.
Just
We're
All right.
discussing for our final vote on Wednesday night.
I'll second that thought.
I also heard some stuff about efficiency programs. I don't know if it's people that'll come in and start looking at the efficiency in the building and ways to reduce it. And then they work towards that contract that you make with them, pay one price, and the money that's saved is their profit. I don't know. I've heard some different things about that. Some people have sent me information, and I only call it an efficiency contract.
I think we lost him. So you're muted, Bonnie.
We lost them. Does any of the other committee members want to put their 2 cents worth in while we wait for Tucker to get back?
Sounds like not.
No.
So
I think I've heard of what he was talking about. I think there was there's a company called Johnson Controls that had the ability to come in and go through the entire building and identify different inefficiencies within the building structure that could make it more efficient to heat, along with their willingness to actually provide all of the equipment at no cost upfront, based on a certain number of years of fixed costs, which that fixed cost was based on exactly what the school has been spending on the heating. And they were gonna, my understanding of it is they were gonna come in and be willing to bring in all the equipment, pay for all the installation and upkeep of the equipment, and they were gonna monitor it and control the systems. And their payment would be the difference between their sunk costs and the efficiency improvements providing savings, which would eliminate the need for having a large outlay of cash by the two towns, and would provide a system of dealing with this rather than the town sinking in large amounts of money. They could simply have a fixed fee over the next several years. I've seen this done in other places. It's been pretty effective in some of the places I've seen it done. A lot of factories have done it this way. And Johnson Controls is a very reputable company.
I'll jump in there.
Thank you.
Johnson Controls said there wasn't going to be enough savings to make it worth their while. So I believe they redrew that contract.
mhm.
That is, yeah, that is. We did have Johnson Control come in and we looked at the bigger picture, and we had the project looked at and reviewed, and Johnson Controls worked quite closely with us in developing that plan. And at the end of the plan, they decided it was not beneficial to them.
And there's documentation for us to review on that and know all about this.
Yes, there is. Yeah.
That would be good to have shared. Yeah.
All right, well, if Tucker gets back in, I'm sure he's trying to log back in. Maybe we can talk about the roof. I don't know, somebody else want to take first grab at this one?
Well, have been a champion of finishing the roof. And I certainly was last year a champion of doing that whole section of roof rather than half of the section of roof. But I'm not sure, and we didn't even discuss it this year. I'm not sure whether we have enough details to know that we want to spend 150,000 on a roof project that we don't even know how many square feet or exactly what the materials are, or have been told, what are they going to find, insulated? Is that the best way? I mean, I don't think we weren't provided with any details on the roof. So I guess I'm going to think that I would rather defer and wait until next year and get more details on the roof.
I was on the committee, me and Mike were when it started, and we kind of started the committee. I think Mike started the committee, I thought, but how many is this the last section, Judith? Is there any other sections left?
No, this is it, right?
No, this is two sections that typically would have been 2 years, but we took off the board took off the flooring and was hoping to get this whole section done because there are some leaks.
But is this the last section, Judith? Is this
This
the
will
this
be,
is
yeah.
the last piece, right?
Correct,
The last two pieces.
correct.
Yeah, okay. I mean,
Yeah,
I'm kind of for finishing it. Let's get it over. Let's get it done with. Because it seems to be a running theme. We fixed the science lab, and then oh my God, the roof's leaking. We fixed the gym floor, and then oh my God, the roof's leaking. So I think this is preventative maintenance, and I think it's the last piece, so it should be finished. I would, that's my input. Let's just finish it and move on to something else. Kind of like the flooring. We got a little off track by doing the multi-purpose room in some other areas, but I think we're down to doing, classrooms maybe now.
This roof has been part of a multi-year plan anyway. This is the end of the multi-year plan. That's just FYI.
Yeah, and it's the same material being used throughout, so it's the same type of a project.
Yeah, I appreciated the public comment because I had some misunderstanding about the project, and I was much more comfortable with it after the hearing than I was before.
I think the most disheartening thing for me is when we did the science room and then, oh my God, all of a sudden the roof's leaking. That should have been addressed first. And if this is a last piece and we can stop that trend, then I think it's a great idea.
No, I could go either way on it. If the folks that know more about roof construction are convinced that it's the right materials, the right time, and so forth, I could go either way on it. It would be nice to finish one project, but it would be nice to finish it. And are we pretty sure this is the last, or have we gone? Sometimes you go all the way around, takes 10 years, and oh my gosh, now you're back to the first one you did.
I think we're back around to the end. I mean, is there going to be another leak somewhere else? Who knows? But from my experience and being on the board, if this is the last piece, we've covered it all. We should have maybe 10 years worth of no problems. That's just an assumption. But when Mike and me first came, or Mike came on the board, or I came on the board, they really had no maintenance. It was just like, fix it when it breaks, fix it when it breaks, fix it when it breaks. And I think this is preventative, finish it off.
Yes, good evening, everybody. This is Mike. I guess I'll speak to this. I've got my own opinion on this. I'm just afraid that maybe we're prematurely doing roofing projects here, and I've said this every year when we've done them. Just because you have a roof leak doesn't mean that there's 10,000 square feet of bad roof. It may be just one roof, one area on a roof that's leaking. This EDPM roofing is supposed to last 40 to 50 years if it's installed properly, which, you know, that's a big if. I get that. I've got a lot of information on these because I was on the facilities, and I've got a map that shows back in 2005, they did a test of the whole high school building with an infrared roof moisture analysis. And in 2005, this section of roof that they're talking about replacing right now had 2 leaks back in 2005 that were repaired. They had a patch on them. And I guess when we got talking about this in the budget, we were, you know, there was no scope of work, what they were looking to do, just replace the roof. I just think that a lot of times there should be a little more further investigation done. We were told that there was 14,000 square feet of roof to finish the project. They weren't exactly sure of that because there was snow on the roof and they couldn't get an accurate measurement. Well, I don't know, the snow only came in December and we knew this project was coming for a year or 2. Then I'm looking through my minutes. In September 23rd, 2020, in the facilities committee meeting minutes, it says that under updates roofing project, that there's only 11,000 square feet left to be finished of roofing to finish the whole school. In the same meeting, they also say that the roofing is going to cost $90,000 to do 11,000 square feet. This would complete the roofing projects for now. The 10-year plan will be complete. Then they had a school board meeting the same night, September 23rd, 2020. And the committee reported to the community and the board that the project they had just done last year was successful. They did 7,800 square feet for $65,000. So that tells me that, you know, it was $8.33 a square foot. And then it says there was only about 11,000 square feet remaining to be done. And we were told at the budget level here a couple of weeks ago that there's 14,000 square feet approximately. Well, that's 3,000 square feet at $8.33 a square foot. That's $24,990 difference. I guess I'm confused on why we can never have accurate scope of works on projects. I understand, you know, I come from that background. And you guys get talking about education, how many teachers we need, this and that. And I've always said, I'll listen to whoever can convince me. But I'm sorry, with these facility projects, I'm never convinced. Why didn't we hire an infrared analysis company to come in, take a look at this roof, say last summer, identify the areas that were leaking, which that's what they do. And maybe it's just a matter of patching a couple areas and we may get 10, 20,000 more, 10, 20 years out of this roof. Just because you have a couple isolated leaks doesn't mean you should go and change 11,000 square feet of roofing. I don't know. It just seems like we're prematurely are spending money sometimes. But that, you know, I'm not trying to convince if anybody to go one way or the other. I'm just telling you where I stand, and I'm willing to discuss it.
Yeah, I'm back, everybody. Sorry about that. My internet bumped out. And Mike, I think you valid points. You've convinced some interesting points on me that I think things that are really need to be looked at. I think that's important. And I think that's kind of where we're all coming from. I think that you've been a strong voice on this and have a great background and understanding of it. I appreciate everything that you bring. So it's great. Thank you. Of course, I missed a little bit. I caught the roof. Is there any more? Bonnie and Jerry, is there anything else that I'm missing, or is there more?
Yeah, I don't have anything else to add. I mean, you know, Mike's experience in this area as far as passes mine. So.
That's great.
Did you miss
And
much?
again,
Did you miss much of
yeah,
the?
go ahead, Bonnie.
Did you miss much of the boiler? Did you take that all in pretty much?
I got most of it. I feel very comfortable with
Right.
what I heard and where I am.
Okay,
So I'm good. Due to this unique role, I get information sent to me differently from all over the place. I take it for whatever. But I know where I stand. So yeah, I'm comfortable. Thank you, Bonnie. So we've done the boiler and the roof. What was another one that we had that was up for discussion?
Teacher contract.
That we wanted,
Teacher
contract.
Yeah, I think we had some
Yep.
questions. I think some of the board members addressed it, and so I was satisfied that with the process, and that it was a fair and equitable process, and everybody on both sides is happy with the results. So that's kind of where I
think
came out after the discussion.
I just,
with me. Go ahead, Bonnie. Go ahead.
I just wondered, the teacher's contract has an amount in there, and that's to cover the amount of money needed. Does, if we prevail with some cuts in staff, does that number to fund that decrease? I mean, it would seem like it would, because that must be based on the number of teachers we got, so that if our vote on, further along.
We're not voting on the number of teachers. We're just voting on a warrant article with how much money.
Right.
So
Right.
Yeah, and
so no other warrant, that warrant article would not be affected. So I mean, it could very well be that our superintendent and the principals come up with a much better way to
Right. Okay.
mitigate the budget without changing payroll. So we don't know.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. We don't know.
Well, I guess I have a couple questions on that. As a group where we have made the suggestion of reducing the salaries section of it, wouldn't we be contradicting if we're accepting that warrant article? And again, it's not that I don't think anybody believes that people don't deserve, more pay for how hard they work. I just look at it as more as it was very contradicting to kind of what we're doing. I got all kinds of comments about how it was a respectful process. I don't doubt that. I don't doubt that, that everybody here was respectful, in dealing with it. It's more about me thinking that it was very contradictory to the what we just did. Me personally disagree with the contract. I think it's very strange that everybody gets the exact same pay raise.
Yeah.
I think it's very interesting that somebody gets an 11.6% pay raise in a year. That's an awful large pay raise. But that's not my job. But I felt that it was contradicting. So maybe I'm wrong on that. I'd love to hear what your thoughts were on that. Or maybe I'm misreading what that warrant article was.
Well, it's always a tough one. You have to bring the teacher's contract forward. You have to for vote at the end and the full amount. I think the school board has to bring it forward for consideration by all the voters. But we don't have to agree. I mean, that's a binding contract. They have to bring it forward for the voters to decide one way or another, no matter what we thought. I think we might have the ability to not recommend, even though we know it has to be brought forward. It's a contract. Not recommend because here we are suggesting 1.25% raises. And, in there is considerably more So I would think a budget committee would be totally within their rights to not recommend, because they're not recommending such high raises. You know, just something to think about. But it has to come forward. It has to be brought forward. I think the entire amount of the contract, because it was negotiated in good faith by the school board, which has
Oh, yeah.
a group that has the authority to negotiate contracts, not us.
Right. And I agree with that. And I think what you're saying is absolutely, true. I felt like people thought that you don't believe that people should get raises. And that to me is silly. It's more about, and believing that it wasn't done in good faith. I found that silly too. Because that's what we got. It was done respectful. It was done in good faith. Of course it was, but we're very contradicting if we're saying, go ahead with this, but yet cut all that. So it's almost in the same line. So that was just me, and that's part of where I'm coming from. And I thought that was part of our feel as the committee, and I could be mistaken, but I think I'm hearing similar.
I think we have to say we don't recommend it, because
Deb, can you please clarify the contract? I think you wanted to make a statement. Is that right?
Yeah, I just wanted to, because I'm hearing some numbers like 11% increases. I just want to clarify that the way the teachers negotiated, they all get the same amount. They get a step, the salary schedule is increasing by $700 for the BA base. That's more for hiring so they can stay competitive. Then they each get either a step increase, which is $1,300. So 700 plus 1,300 is $2,000. Or if they're off step, they get $2,000. So they're all getting $2,000 increase. The percentage does vary depending on what their salary amount is, but the total for the group overall is 3.5%. So I'm not sure where 11% came from. So I just wanted to clarify that.
Yeah,
That was individually. Deb.
Yeah.
If you look at the individual ones,
I think that's the highest individual.
it's not.
Taking 2 steps.
I thought it was 5%. Oh, there might have been someone who
And-
who moved tracks. A track.
I think
because
five point something
Yeah,
percent.
5% might have been the most.
And then roughly the same amount the second year, because it's a 2-year contract.
And
Yeah, but I thought we're
right.
Yeah.
And then I'm also looking at the original number that was given to me of 2,300. I forgot that it was moved down to 2,000.
Okay.
Right? Wasn't the original 2,300? Yep.
Yeah, so from last year's contract.
And again,
So again, I just wanted to clarify because no one is getting an 11% increase.
Right, thank you.
Okay. All right. I guess
We want to talk about, we're
go ahead. Yeah, please.
We'll probably be ready to talk about that on Wednesday. So, but
Yep.
we have, I think, 5 warrant articles relating to putting unexpended funds from this year into trust funds, which we, preliminarily did not support. And so they're related to facilities, equipment, the new capital special ed, assuming that other thing passes. I think vehicle and technology. Do I get those right, Debbie? I'm looking at the trust fund balances. So I think our concerns is some of these already had a pretty large balance, and without really any anticipated utilization in any kind of a near-term capacity. And so, we're kind of taking the taxpayers' money and squirreling it away for almost no interest. I think Sue Fadden made some really good points about robbing Peter to pay Paul. Talked about it. The funds are there, putting away when something is problematic. you know, something she encouraged us to support, I think, is what I was hearing. But we did not talk at all at the hearing about what those balances currently are.
Probably have another hour.
Huh? Oh, I think Bonnie was talking to somebody else. So, so I think the vehicle current balance is $53,000. That's one of them, and there's a warrant article to put 10,000 more in it. So, assuming the money is available, I think the issue is: do we want to return it to the taxpayer or put it into this particular fund? That's what the issue is voting, and we can talk through each one of these if we wanted to see, and also what the utilization has been. Deb, have I elucidated the issue correctly for that warrant article?
Yeah.
And it's almost like another option. Sorry about that. I was just being asked when is dinner time. I said an hour. So that's my prediction for how much longer we meet. Sorry about that. Isn't there another option that we just don't raise the 100,000? Period. That we can cut the budget by 100,000 if we don't intend to return it to the towns or intend to put it in these trust funds, and or we intend to apply it towards the roof or intend to apply it towards something else.
In practical purpose, that's how it works, but
yes,
the mechanism doesn't work that way. It goes back to the town, and the warrant article with the amount of the budget in it is in the budget.
But so, it doesn't go back to the towns if the money isn't even there in the first place. Well, that's what I'm saying.
If it goes into the trust fund, then that's where it is. It's either in the trust fund or it goes back to the town.
Or it doesn't get raised in the first place.
Well, it's already been raised because it's only money from that's left over from the previous year's budget.
Exactly, but we can
and if every dollar in the budget was spent, then this whole article is moot, because there's no money to either put in the trust fund or send back. So
if we reduce the budget by the 100,000,
it doesn't matter because it's last year's budget, not this year's budget. So this is
okay, so that was one of the areas that I was making sure that I understood, and I understand it the same way you do, Jerry, is that the only money going into this trust funds is stuff that's being rolled over, right?
Right.
So
and if there is no money to
is there an anticipation?
Well,
right. Is there an anticipation of that much money being there? You know, to me,
there always is. There always is. But if the budget is trimmer, there isn't. And, you know, and that's my third option. The budget is $100,000 trimmer, so there isn't $100,000, you know, leftover contingency, whatever you want to call it. There isn't. You need that 100,000 to pay for current expenses.
We can't trim last year's budget, so we're not going to go back.
No, you can't. No, you absolutely can't.
So.
So is there does anybody know if there's an anticipation?
Go ahead, Tucker. I'm sorry.
Yeah, is there an anticipation of how much left over from last year's budget? I guess I mean we're last year's budget.
Well, Deb's sitting there with a smile on her face. I'm sure she could answer that real quick.
Right. I'd like to know, do we know there's going to be a surplus? That's interesting to me.
I could not say that we are going to have a surplus at this point in time. We have extra expenses this year due to COVID, although we have had some grant money and we've used all of that grant money up. So, but then we do have some things that we're not spending this year due to COVID, but I could not commit right now and say we're going to have that money left over.
Okay,
Yeah. our
what
tra-
is the,
our
is it, is
transportation
it normal?
expense? Oh, I'm sorry, Tucker. I was going to say, I noticed some expenses seem to be running really low, like.
Yeah, some are, and some are above, so.
But there's no promises of where we're going to end up
Yeah.
by June. So that's what I was.
Is it, I guess my other question is, and again, new to the process, is it normal to have that much money left over?
Yes.
We usually have a couple 100,000 the last few years. Last year, I gave you guys those reports when Tucker, you weren't here, but in the fall when we met, and I think Bonnie was the only one at the meeting, but we gave her all the reports. We had about $300,000 left over last year because we didn't, although we spent all of our money on our salaries and benefits, which is about 78% of our budget, even though in March we went remote. But we didn't have sports, we didn't have field trips, we didn't have things at the end of the year. So we had some surplus or excess monies that we did not spend. And that money went back in the tax rate setting process.
It didn't go into the trust funds?
We did put 100,000 into the trust funds because that's what was in the prior year's warrant articles.
Prior year's warrant articles, okay.
And
And
then
again, I'm
after that,
assuming
that money went back.
Yeah, and I'm assuming last year, again, unique year due to our cost of transportation, a lot of stuff was dropped way off.
I mean, I've been here for 20
and I
years
saw
and there's been some years that we have not been able to fund all of the trust funds. Or, I mean, there's been years we had to, we had no money to return. But the last couple of years, I mean, on an $8 million budget, when you have $200,000 left, that's kind of scary at the end of the year.
No, okay. I guess my point is that if we don't recommend the warrant articles, just our recommendation, let's say the warrant articles don't pass and it's 200,000 that automatically goes back to the taxpayers, correct?
Correct.
Okay. All right. Just making sure I understand exactly how this trust funds, because when I first looked at all this, I looked at it as we're taking 100,000 and putting it in a trust fund. So now I'm understanding the process, and I heard a lot of it the other night. So I just wanted to make sure I see how that works as we move forward on the votes. Cool. All right. Does anybody else have any other questions or comments? Concerns? I mean, is there a certain warrant article that in the trust funds that we want to specifically discuss?
Well, I guess my point is most of them have some money in it that would handle any kind of an emergency situation that comes up. And so, I don't think putting 100,000 in there accomplishes an awful lot right now. And I mean, we could put 100,000. I mean, to accomplish what I was thinking of accomplishing, and you're right, technically that's how it all works out. But if we took the 100,000 that we say we want to put in trust funds, put it all in facilities per se, put 100,000 in there. That one does some good, and who knows, depending upon how the votes go at the school district meeting. Well, we take it back out. We've been known to do that. We've been known to put 20,000 in and take it right back out. We've been known to do that many a time. So I guess I'm just trying to make use of this $100,000 for a current need, as opposed to it just going in the fund to sit around. And I know, you can't do it. It's just not as simple. I agree.
Well, I mean, I can see what you're saying, Bonnie, as in, let's say the boiler system's going through and we have 300,000 there. We plan ahead and say, okay, we're taking 100 out of facilities. And if there's 100 left over, we're putting it back in that we just took out of our own trust. That makes sense. That makes sense to me.
That's how you do it. I mean, it's not as straightforward as Jerry's right. That's how it goes. But there is a way. That's how sometimes we fund things. We have many a time the school district has bought something that we said no to in the budget, but they bought it because they took it out of the trust fund. Well, why can't we put 100 in the trust fund and take it right back out to pay for the roof or whatever? I mean, it's not straightforward. It would have to be done in a manner like that, but it would save 100,000 on this budget. But I don't feel strongly, of reinventing the wheel with trust funds. I don't feel that strongly about it. It just was an idea. And maybe we don't do the 10%, the 20%, the 40%, the whatever percent. Maybe we want different percents, because I don't see much sense in putting more in the vehicle fund. There's 53 in there and we're not even buying a vehicle. The special ed, you don't know, but 183,000 probably meets an emergency need. 24,000 in the equipment. Well, maybe another 10 might be nice or not. If we had some piece of equipment that might break down. Do you know what I mean? I'm just saying we don't necessarily have to go along with the 10, 10, 10.
No, and we do that by recommending
yeah,
yes or no. So, and personally, I would likely support some of the warrant articles in this section and then recommend against some of the other ones. So yeah. just like you're saying, without tipping my hand at all. So,
and I think that is I think this discussion really explained it a lot better, rather than just seeing things thrown into a trust fund. I think, and anybody that's listening would understand more also that maybe that's true. We don't need to add to every single trust fund. I think that's awesome. I think
yeah, and
and I think that's interesting.
We do have an energy.
What's that?
We do have an energy trust fund, and there was no warrant article to increase the energy trust fund. But there was
right.
some for vehicle and for technology and for special ed. None of those funds
yep.
Were tapped into this year. Personally, I think it's a great benefit to have funds available if an emergency comes up of an appropriate amount. So, but it's harmful if it gets too big and it's sitting there not generating any income at all. So I'd rather have it in people's pockets. So, but they're also. I mean, there has been some use. They had the ES heating system architect was approved and paid for out of the facilities project. So, the infrastructure grant, and so on. So, so a little bit of use this year.
Right. I think we've hit all the areas, unless I've noticed that we've missed anything. What do you guys think? Is there anything more that people want to discuss? I mean, I think we're at a point where we're not sitting here to vote. We're not sitting here to make any recommendations, unless there's a huge change that somebody feels that we need to make. We vote, if I'm right, we vote individually, publicly at the meeting on Wednesday, or do we just say we're going forth with our budget? I just want to make sure I understand the procedures. What do you have on that?
I would say after the meeting closed.
Being new to it.
Yeah, I would say, my understanding is after the public meeting closes, it's going to reopen. After it closes, then we'll go through each warrant article one by one, the ones we're making recommendations on, and either change them. In the case of our budget one, we may make changes or not, and then we'll vote either once or multiple times and go through each one of the eight warrant articles that the budget committee is supposed to make a recommendation on. And when we're done, we close the hearing. So close our.
I just wanted to make sure that.
Debbie, did I get anything wrong there?
Level everybody else.
Yeah, I think,
That's what I'm saying. I think,
again, Wednesday night, you'll hear, you'll take your final, you'll hold the budget hearing again. And then you go through each article, make your final budget recommendation and then your final recommendation on each of the other money articles.
Okay.
Well, I know we have a
All right.
few people
And
board here and from administration. If anybody has anything they think would be helpful to us that they want to comment on, and I'm open for it, Tucker, if you're comfortable with it. I'll leave it to you as our chair.
Right.
Tucker, I just wanted to remind the committee that it's going to be, the purpose of their meeting on Wednesday is for the committee to present a budget. So that's what's going to be, so that, and then at the end of that, they will answer whatever questions and then vote on.
I thought we already did that.
That you're going to be presenting what you're deciding on.
Yeah. Yeah, we had a little discussion on that. Wednesday, the moderator recessed the hearing, I think, is what he did. So he didn't have to put it in the paper again and all that business. So Wednesday, we have a recessed hearing that we have to open back up. And I don't know whether the moderator was intending to return or not. I don't know. But anyway, we have a situation of, we have to open back up a recessed hearing. And I was trying to think out loud. All right, we now are back to a hearing, and I would hope we don't spend 3.5 hours going down through the budget again. I hope it would be perfectly appropriate for us to just address, the changes we have made and entertain, but we can hear from the public. 80 people can show up all wanting to talk, I think. I'm not sure, I might be wrong, but I think we've got a recessed hearing. We're opening back up with people anticipating to be able to say something if they feel like it, and ask us a question, even on something that we've totally decided long ago. I don't know, and I don't know if there's anybody here that's a parliamentarian that can set us straight as to what's happening on Wednesday. And then we close the hearing, I think, and then we open up our meeting, our board meeting, our committee meeting, and vote on what we heard at both hearings, and finalize a budget, come up with a bottom line figure. I think that's what happens.
Right, exactly. But what you have to do is, before we close the hearing, you have to present amounts of money to the, like these warrant articles. You have to have what you're going to say has to be there.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think we almost, I really do, and I really had the impression that tonight we gotta have the amounts. So
Well,
that
I guess-
people are aware of what they're going to hear and what the hearing is going to be on, whether it's going to be on exactly where we stand now or something different, I think.
well,
I'm not sure.
I mean, I thought this was part of too, that do we want to change our amounts? I mean, if there's no change to our amounts, if we feel comfortable with the amounts that we've already done, we don't have to go line item by line item, do we? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I don't think we start over again.
No, that's what I'm saying. No.
And nothing about this process keeps us from making a change after the closing of the hearing in our budget committee session, because that's the normal process. We get the input, the meeting closes, we talk again, and if we want to change the warrant article amount or change our vote on one of the warrant articles, we can do it in that final meeting, is what I've been told for weeks on this process.
So I think we have to bring forward, if we're not going to vote on anything, change anything tonight, we've got to bring forward our number. We got to bring forward the same number, the same exact number. We got to go to that public hearing, recessed public hearing, with a number. And so the only number we got now is the same exact number.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
I agree. I think we go with the same number. And how much are we opening up again? I don't want to go open up to the exact same thing we just got. I'm all for some questions. We kept going, public questions, board questions. Wasn't a lot of questions, a lot of comments, which is fine. And that's what we wanted to hear. So I guess we have to find out from the moderator where we want to, and I assume the moderator will be there, where we want to jump back into. Because the questions and some of that disappeared. It all slowed down. So
Right.
maybe we should have just finished last night.
No, well, we couldn't, because then we wouldn't have been able to have this meeting, and we wouldn't have been able to discuss, go through a lot of and we wouldn't have had sufficient time to absorb the things. So when we return to the hearing, the budget recommendation that we have put forward and that is the same as it was when the meeting ended. So we don't change the amounts at that point, not until after the public hearing is closed, is my understanding. And I think I heard some confirmation from our best parliamentarian in the audience here. So, we'll get it right at the end, and we'll make it. We've worked really hard to, in the interest of the community and the taxpayers and the students. So it'll be fine.
My question on that, Jerry, is when do we know the public part is ended?
Because we closed the hearing.
Okay, because we decided to close it.
It was like a really loud gavel. And
okay, I'm all for that. I'll bring one. No. And I'm just trying to say, is there a time frame? Is it just, because like I said, it slowed down at the end there.
Yeah.
The questions, comments, however you want to do it, it slowed down and started to go in a different direction. And again, so now, if there's some good questions, I'm all for it.
A lot of great questions.
Yeah. And again, I think this is a great opportunity for us to really gather them up and not react right away. So that's good. I mean, I'm just trying to, it's good. I think that we definitely, I'm not saying we don't close it off to the public. I was just saying, what's the actual number? Do you wait until everything disappears, or?
Well, when we're in the public session, it's still the same amount that we presented, because it's a continuation of that meeting.
Right.
So.
Right. Okay.
So Deb, what responsibility do we have to the public? Obviously, our deliberations after the recessed hearing on Wednesday, people could sit in and hear what we finally come up with, period.
Yep. Typically, again, go back to when we were in the NPR having your meeting.
Yep.
The purpose of this meeting is to notice the public as to what they're going to be voting on in March. It's also for you guys to get any input from the public so you can make your final decision on what you are going to present for the budget on the warrant article. So yes, so we recess the meeting, we're reconvening on Wednesday. You continue until there's no more public input. And then when you then at the end of that, you guys will take your vote on, you'll present your final budget and vote on the final budget and all of the recommended, all of the warrant articles, whether you recommend them or not. So once the public comment is done, you'll close your hearing, and then you'll vote in public.
And that's what I found interesting, was the public had kind of stopped last time, which was interesting. Okay.
They stopped because you guys were going to recess.
Well, yeah,
That's why
it was a recommendation. And yes.
It stopped because we were going to recess and they were going to have another chance at it. Yes.
Right. Okay.
And the only reason we got ourselves into that situation is it was getting so late. It was 9:30 and we hadn't talked about the warrant articles and trust funds much at all. And we needed to meet afterwards. So we would have been another hour, 10:30, and then we would have had to meet. It would have been midnight. We couldn't finish up. We just absolutely couldn't finish.
Well, and at the same time, if the people keep talking, you're telling me it could be until midnight anyways.
Yes, it could be
So
again.
that's the hard part.
We need to end this Wednesday night. You guys got to come away with your final vote.
And I'm just saying that, I'm not saying cut anybody off. Never, ever, ever. I understand that we always and I want to hear from people. But it's interesting.
Now,
All right. So that sounds good.
Deb,
Go, Bonnie.
can we, is it feasible to say our public hearing, we're reconvening a public hearing and set a time limit on the rest of this public hearing? I don't think we can. I don't think we can say 1 hour.
No, it's, you have to allow for public comment, so.
Yeah.
But
Public
can
is-
you limit the public comments time to like 2 minutes, 3 minutes, something
Oh, well,
like that?
like Robert was doing, yeah, each person can have 3 minutes to speak on the topic. I mean,
Yeah, okay.
that's why we had Robert there to try to moderate that.
But you also allow them to keep coming back as much as they want. So, I mean, which is fine. I'm just.
I mean,
that's how it all
normally,
works.
a lot of times Robert will just say, okay, once you start to, if you start to hear the same things over and over again. But I mean, you are
Yep.
supposed to let the public, this is public hearing.
Is
Absolutely.
Robert coming to moderate? Do you know?
Yes.
Is he?
Yes.
Yeah.
No, I think it was good. It was good. And we heard a lot. And I think that was also part of it, is we heard a lot. And I think that's important to why we were able to have this meeting. It was awesome. So.
I did hear a few public comments from people who told me this, said, I hope you and the board, figure out ways to work together better, because that would be better. And obviously there's smart people in both groups and a lot of experience in both groups. So I think in some ways it's good that we work independently, and but at some point, we gotta share ideas and be civil at that point too. So.
Yeah, I think that's I heard that also. I think that's great comment. And I think that this process this year, I think will open up that. I found afterwards, talking a little bit before they went into their meeting, that there's a want on both sides for that. And I think that's important. That's awesome. And that's great. I think that can happen. And I think that's hugely important. I think part of it is those meetings so this discussion to me should happen at those very first meetings when Deb presented everything to the whole budget, the school board, which I went to every single one of those. Now I understand that that's my time to really ask questions that we dive into afterwards. So there's a lot to learn, and I think it's pretty cool. It could be a very, very strong process. And I think both boards, committees getting on together, that can make that work.
Yeah.
So I agree with that.
And I think more communication earlier, more joint meetings earlier. It's not our job to go to the school board meeting to gather our information. It isn't, unless we're invited there as a joint board to hear from a department head or a tech department. It's not enough to just say, all right, budget committee members, if you want to hear about something, show up at the school board meeting. That's not enough. We have the right and the ability and the responsibility. We can call in all the department heads and have them give us a personal presentation. We can call in an engineer and have him give us the whole scoop. We don't have to go running around to get the answers and the information we needed. We can fully expect and ask people to come to our meeting and have a discussion with us. You have that separation. There's a reason you have these two boards. They're looking at it differently, and we both have our responsibilities and our mission. And we have every right to call an expert. We have every right to call in people to give us advice. We don't have to go to another meeting to get it.
It scares people, Bonnie. If you don't agree with them, it just scares them. I mean, look, I got 2 personal attacks in that last meeting. They're scared.
It's unfortunate. It's just very, very unfortunate how this all went this year. And I think communication, you can blame anything on insufficient or poor or misinformation, miscommunication. Next year, we've got to come up with a process that works better, and we welcome it. And we need to know what the school board thinks. We can't do this in a vacuum. And we can't. And we've tried real hard. We've done our research, and we have received some good information, but we've also had to do our own digging around to find out the data we want. And it doesn't have to be that way. I'm really, really, really hoping that we've learned an awful lot about how difficult all this has been, to do it a little differently next year.
I would think that would be the job of everybody, to always make things better. So I think you're right. And I think it will be. As long as everybody stays, you can't change the group every year. You have to have some consistency a little bit, and I think that helps too. I agree with you, Bonnie. It's going to work out much better. Is there anything else we need to bring in front of this committee or board, this group, this meeting tonight? Do we feel, again, is there anything else anybody else needs to bring? Because I feel like we got a lot out of the listening to the public. I think that us being allowed to recess and voice our own opinions amongst ourselves has been a great process. Again, I learned more from listening to you guys and how you saw it and how it was perceived. I learned a lot. Mike's always got a great point of view. Robert's always our truth teller. So I really have enjoyed it all. So I didn't know if there was anything else we feel we need to bring before this committee right now. Because if we don't, I'm all for adjourning for this evening and getting back at it Wednesday night. So, and just someone tell me the right time Wednesday, 6:30 or 6? 6:30, right?
6:30.
6:30.
I mean, I had to work. I did work right up until 6, so I was stuck and got here as quick as I could, but I did. Yeah.
Whoops, and there's nothing going on tomorrow night, right?
No,
Nope. We are to adjourn again back at 6:30. Back and not start over, continue with the public forum.
right.
So, and I feel very confident in being able to answer a lot more of those questions and concerns. And as us as a group, if I were asked individually. So I think that's what this was about. And I thought we achieved that tonight. I don't know how anybody else feels.
Definitely move the needle. So.
Yep. So with that, I actually make a recommendation to adjourn if I'm allowed to. So
Yes, you are.
Thank you.
you second that? All right. Thanks, guys. Great meeting. Very interesting.
Thank you.
See you all Wednesday. Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Good night.
Right.